Well, I noticed that you guys marched on in Stonewall Mountain, Georgia, something like that. And there was a whole bunch of guys dressed in blacks with guns and things like that. What I don't understand about your organization, NFAC, and people like you guys, I don't know what you want. America is a big country. You can do what you want in this country. You can build, you can have families, you can live where you want. When I was growing up, that's the way it was. And I grew up in Alabama on a plantation. And black people were more successful then with marriage and family and land ownership and businesses than they are today. What do you want exactly from the white people?
Well, that's a great question. I'm glad you phrased it the way you did, because I too grew up in the old days. Don't let the smooth looks fool you. It is the fact that you and I both have sat back and witnessed a deterioration, not only of the morals and the precepts of that which we used to live under, but also a steady return and a sliding backwards to the days reminiscent of Jim Crow and those particular practices, not from all people who are not of color, but from a select group that have become more prominent in the last 4 years, thus creating the rise of the NFAC. It's not what we want from white people. We don't want anything from white people. What we want to do is to determine our own destiny. What we want to do is to not exist under a system that treats us as second-class citizens through systemic racism and practices that have been ingrained in this country for the last 240 some odd years. What we desire are reparations for the 246 years of free labor that our descendants gave to this country, which made it wealthy, and that a lot of those companies still exist today. What we desire is restitution. What we would like to see is a reform of the policing within this country, a reform of the judicial system, and of course, the treatment of all folks equally under the law. These are the things that we've seen that have begun to deteriorate in this country, in spite of all the great opportunity that you speak of, in spite of all the wealth that this country has amassed, in spite of all the political power that this country has around the world. It is still subjecting a certain population within its borders to what we would call human rights violations. So it's not what we want from them. We don't want anything. What we want is the right to determine our own destiny and the ability to defend ourselves. If you study the history of militias within this country, and I don't know why it's such an issue that black people formed the militia when there have been white militias around for years, and the purpose that they serve under the Constitution in the event that they have to be called up by the president to augment military function within a state or for the nation. It didn't become an issue until black people decided to form a militia to protect themselves, not to attack anyone, not to demand anything. But militias are used to emphasize a political position. The Democrats have militias that actually went out and committed acts of violence back in the 1800s. The Republicans had militias that went out and drove their points home during the Civil War. We, as a militia, would simply push forward a political point that no one who is not going to honor or try to help the black people to try to overcome together with us the 5 things that we have determined from a census that has been done across, we hope, most of the population, that we can have those that require us to have our political support or our financial support. That you would have to do like every other demographic does that agrees to enforce or to uphold this particular manifesto that we come up with that's beneficial to those of us who have a melanated persuasion within this country and worldwide. That is our overall goal.
Everything that you just said sounds like a bunch of complaints. It's all weak. When I was growing up under the Jim Crow law in Alabama on a plantation, black men were not complaining and they were not weak like that. Instead, they built, they got married, they raised families, and they taught us that too by examples. And even though Jim Crow law was in existence, it didn't interfere with our personal lives, our family lives, and our friendship with other white people who were not a part of that, because it was a Democratic Party thing that put that together. And it's it's hard for me.
Interesting that you say that.
Let me just finish this. I want to ask a question with it. It's hard for me to see grown black men complaining and acting angry and trying to complain about systemic racism, which doesn't exist, about what the white man is or is not doing, and white people are not holding black people back at all. I see that you guys organize your organizations, you march the street with guns, but you're not doing anything about morality. You're not getting married. You're not raising decent children. You're not starting businesses. You're not stopping the gang violence. You can organize to march up and down the streets complaining about white people, but you won't do anything about the black-on-black crime, the out-of-wedlock birth. And that's the role of the men to lead the way. That's the role. I know, but let me just say, that's the role of leading. That's the role of leading the way for the black women. Why aren't you guys doing that? Why aren't you guys doing that?
What is your question?
Why aren't you guys, instead of running up and down the street and complaining about so-called systemic racism and all that, why aren't you as men leading the way for the black women and children?
So first of all, let me answer your question. Number one, we haven't run up and down the street and done anything, so don't terminize us that way. Additionally, we haven't made a complaint about anything. Secondly, you shocked me that you haven't done your research about the NFAC. We are very deeply involved in gang reconciliation.
But you just said systemic racism and all that. And that doesn't exist.
I let you talk, sir. If two black men are going to sit here and have a conversation, then let's have a conversation.
Respond to my question.
I'm responding, but to cut me off while I'm talking is a form of disrespect that I don't tolerate.
Go ahead.
As I said before, if you had done your research on the NFAC, which I can tell you haven't, number one, we're not complaining. We issue no complaint. We don't protest. We don't demonstrate. And I've made that very clear in many of my interviews. We form military formations and we move from one place to the other. We don't chant. We don't wave signs. We don't go out and say anything. We move in silence. There is no proof of us doing that. We don't run up and down the streets. We have addressed two situations tactically which have produced fruit. One of those was the March on Stone Mountain to address a threat that was made to all black people on July 4th against all black people by the white supremacists, the KKK that normally meets there. We tactfully went there. They weren't there. Additionally, our second mission was the getting transparency in the Breonna Taylor case, since the city of Louisville felt like they weren't getting any traction. And I went into that city, met with all of the powers to be, had a responsible conversation, have gained the transparency that we wanted, haven't fired a shot, haven't broken a law, haven't threatened anyone, haven't done a damn thing. So I don't know who you think you're talking about, but our organization doesn't do that. Additionally, when you talk about gangs and what's happening within the black community, we're deeply involved in gang reconciliation with the California Black Writers. We are married to many of the organizations at the grassroots levels that are doing things like addressing the problems that are systemic within the black race. We're not just complaining to white people, and I'm insulted that you would sit here and paint this minuscule picture of what you call our little movement, which is the most significant organization by black people within the pro-black movement in the last 60 years, and it's something that's never been done in the existence of this country.
What I don't understand about what you're all doing is if you can organize a rally, if you can organize and go and pretend that the police brutality is happening and racism is happening, why aren't you organizing black people to return to God, get married, raise decent children, start businesses? Why don't I buy land? You can do that in America. Why not put that same effort to rebuilding families? Because the real reality is that black people are suffering, those who are suffering, due to the moral character.
I beg you to stop again, sir. This interview is going to end prematurely if you don't stop sitting there letting me know how little you know about us. If you study
I know about all the stuff you just named.
We're doing just that. We're doing everything you said.
But it doesn't show anywhere.
At the beginning of this conversation, you asked me what was my religion, and I didn't want to get into it because I didn't want to get into a theological discussion. But since you opened the door, allow me to walk through it. Not only do I teach on the regular on a show called Facts Over Feelings, where we deal with just those issues, where we encourage things such as group economics, where we talk about the stabilization of the American family, where we talk about the fact and where we teach on things such as post-slave traumatic stress syndrome, where we talk about the fact that we have to raise our racial esteem and begin to recapture the unity that we had before. I'm doing all of those things, and most of the people in the NFAC are of the same religious faith and persuasion and believe in all of those principles. If you study us, you'll find out that I made it very clear that one of our goals was not just the protection of the Black community, but the protection of the Black community so it could self-heal and we could assist with all of those things that you just named. Every last thing that you just named, we have already been doing.
I don't see any improvement. I've looked around the country and I've asked and I've interviewed all types of people. I don't see anywhere where Black people are building. I do see that everywhere they go, they destroy. For an example, there's a terrorist attack upon America right now by the radical far-left Black lesbians, the Black Lives Matter people, and the Antifa and all that. They're destroying. And Black people are stealing and robbing and no shame about it. They are taken from the white man and they feel that. I didn't grow up like that. And then Black people didn't, when I was growing up, Black people didn't think as a group. They thought as an individual, as Christians, as American citizens. So they built. And those Black who was of decency, they hung out with. Those who were not, they didn't hang out with. Why do you guys have to act like all Blacks are the same? You got to have this movement going. Why not just live as normal people and treat everybody equally?
How can you sit there and say live as normal people and act like something that exists right in front of your face is even playing out as we're talking about? Systemic racism does exist.
There's no proof of that.
Brainwashed by Tom. I didn't cut you off, sir. In the book Brainwashed by Tom Harrell, he talks about people like you, people who don't realize that we've only been off the plantation for about 155 years and that you've only been a full-blown citizen for about 56 years. You talked about living under Jim Crow and that our culture and our memory and our entire race was destroyed for 246 years under the act of enslavement. Enslavement is a violent act. It is not something that you are, and that our race has never been given a chance to recover from 400 years of enslavement worldwide.
That's not true.
Let me finish, please. You asked me on this show, you're going to let me speak. You're not going to run over me like you do these weak people. And I am not here to sit and listen to someone who is a champion for the very group whose ass they decide to kiss just so that they can have a spot to say what they want to say. I represent the face of the Black movement now, and it is different than anything like BLM, who we do not align with, or anything else. Everything that you're saying, you're totally ignoring the fact that the empirical evidence exists right in front of your face. If we had to abolish the U.S. government, reestablish a unified coalition court, redistribute the land, take back the gold that's been taken, abolish the U.S. dollar, and a few other things, they call that a revolutionary act. But when you're talking about people addressing such things as the continued colonization of the Black community through gentrification, the infusion of the Black community of folks that continue to make it impossible for us to achieve unity again, the ADOS issue that's still going on, the integration that does not equal an equal equation that's still going on. Tomorrow when I speak in D.C. at the March on Washington, I intend to let everybody know just what you said. Things are not as normal as you paint them out to be. There has been a gradual deterioration. There has been a gradual deterioration within our communities and externally in this country. This is not the United States that I fought for. This is not the United States that I wore the uniform for. This is not the United States, as you so eloquently said, that I remember from the 70s and the 80s. This is not the United States. Yesterday, a 17-year-old boy got a weapon that he shouldn't even have had and got a ride from his white mother to go up to another state to kill some people simply because he was still being poisoned with the poison of racism. Where are all the Klan robes? You can't find a Klan robe in a thrift store or the Salvation Army because they still have them. You're not going to sit there and insult me and the 45 million other people that still exist in this country and try to do just what you said.
Let me say that you're going on too long. Hold on.
Without somebody calling the police on you. And then the police itself that you out of the state patrol that is still killing people at will, and there has been no redress. You can sit there and act like it doesn't exist in your comfortable white world. We have begun an operation.
You're going on too long. We don't have a lot of time. Hold on.
Answer those questions.
Grand Marshal Jay, you're going on too long in your response. You have a whole bunch of fancy words that has no meaning. I think that good actions speak louder than words. And what should be happening, rather than you guys carrying on like this, running up and down and complaining, Why don't you start building and encourage black people to stop destroying and let the world see that there's more to them than complaining about what somebody else is or not doing. And that's the role of the men. That's the role of the men, is to do rather than to just use a lot of fancy words. All you're doing is use a lot of fancy words.
You're talking about
I'm talking to you.
Jesse.
You said a whole bunch of stuff and nobody know what you mean about it.
You must be talking about those other groups, because I said it once before. You must didn't hear me.
Where are you building homes?
People to unify. We are telling people to practice group economics.
Where are you building homes?
More gun sales in the last 3 months.
Where are you doing this? You're saying it. Where is it happening?
We've done more in 3 months.
Where?